Hello everybody. It's a beautiful spring day here in Krakow. So I'm standing down alongside the banks of the river Vistula. I've been out and about doing a bit of filming for Insight Vacations actually, and I'm going to go for a walk through the district of Kazimierz now, and I'm going to introduce you to some hidden areas of the city and some of the famous street art of the city and some of the monuments and sites that you probably normally wouldn't hear about or see. And I'm going to start with one that's right here next to me. So have a look at this. It's one of my favourite monuments actually here in Krakow. Jock the Dog, the most faithful canine friend ever, epitomising a dog's boundless devotion to his master. Throughout the entire year 1990-1991, Jock was seen waiting in vain at the Rondo Grunwaldskie roundabout to be fetched back by his master, who had passed away at this very site. Man's best friend. It doesn't matter where you are, in which country you are. Dog's a man's best friend. So he's right here in front of the castle, down by the Vistula. The Vistula River is just down this way. It's a stunning spring day and a great day for a walk through Kazimierz. So, let's go. So it's a wonderful view across the Vistula River from the Grunwaldskie Bridge towards Wawel Hill, towards the castle. And the area that we're going to walk through today, Kazimierz actually, the street that I'm standing on, that this bridge leads onto, today it's called Dietla. But where we see that traffic now, that was once another branch of the Vistula River. It was reclaimed in the 19th century, took its name from the mayor of that time, and that part of the river used to divide Krakow from the city of Kazimierz. So the district that I'm going to walk through now, the area which is famously Krakow's former Jewish quarter and a very Bohemian district today, was once an independent city founded by King Kazimierz the Great during the 14th century. Once a very prosperous city, not just a Jewish city but also a Christian city, and a very interesting part of Krakow today. So I've made my way just a little further down the river from Jock, our faithful friend, and here to one of the real landmarks alongside the river Vistula, this Paulinite church and monastery, which is known as Skalka, or the Church on the Rock. This church is dedicated to the Archangel Michael and to Saint Stanislav, and it was at this place in 1079 that the Bishop of Krakow, Stanislav, was martyred, murdered by the king, dismembered by the king for challenging the authority of the king. He's now one of the patron saints of Krakow and one of the patron saints of Poland, and his relic is in the cathedral of Krakow, and it's a good place for us to start our walk through Kazimierz. Standing in the courtyard of the Paulinite complex here, and this is called the Altar of Three Millennia. Statues of various important religious and historical figures. Of course, Pope John Paul II, Saint Stanislav, who was martyred here, Saint Faustina, Saint Jadwiga, Queen of Poland during the late 14th century, Saint Adalbert, who baptized much of the nation during the late 10th century. I'll just pan around and we'll be able to see the monastery complex also. This is all from the late 18th century. When we talk about the martyrdom of Saint Stanislav, of course in the late 11th century, 1079. It was a former church, a Romanesque church, which stood here at that time. And he was dismembered by the king's own sword, having challenged his authority and the authority of the crown. The king took it upon himself to kill his bishop. Of course, the king was eventually deposed and excommunicated for this act. But there's a pool over here, a spring, and according to the legend of Saint Stanislav, it was into this spring that his body parts were thrown before they miraculously reformed. And there we can see Saint Stanislav in the middle of that spring, of that pool. The gate directly ahead of me leads to a crypt. This church, Skalka, again is one of the pantheons of Poland, and in that crypt are buried many famous Poles, amongst them Jan Długosz, bishop from the 15th century, considered Poland's first historian, Stanisław Wyspiański, wonderful poet, writer, dramatist, painter and designer of the 19th century, and Szymanowski, considered the second greatest composer of Poland after Chopin. And so this beautiful 18th century church dedicated to Saint Stanislav, as I said, who was martyred here on the altar, and to the Archangel Michael. I'm going to make my way through this very elaborate iron gate and start walking through the district of Kazimierz. So just a short walk down the road from Skalka and from the Church of the Archangel Michael, we have this Augustinian convent, and the sisters would walk across this small bridge, arched, covered arch here, just ahead of us, to arrive to St. Catherine's Church, which is just above me here on the left-hand side, which we'll see shortly as we pass beneath the arch. St. Catherine's Church was one of the two churches founded by Kazimierz the Great in Kazimierz. It was founded during the end of the 14th century. And, well, in this western part of Kazimierz, which I'm in now, this is very much the Christian area of Kazimierz. So, of course, many people know Kazimierz as having been the centre of Jewish life here in Krakow, but the western part of the area is very much the Christian district, the Jewish centre on the eastern part. This bas relief on the eastern side of the former town hall commemorates the welcoming of the Jews to Poland during the time of Kazimierz the Great. So Kazimierz founded this city, and he was this king, of course, who inherited a kingdom of wood, a disparate kingdom, and left it a unified, strong kingdom of stone, founded many new towns and cities, as well as 80 castles, and he recognised the need for a well-trained professional class to administer this strong state of Central Europe. He founded the university to train such a professional class, and at a time when the Jews were mostly being persecuted in other parts of Europe, particularly, of course, in the Iberian Peninsula during the Reconquista. He welcomed them, recognising their excellent business expertise, welcomed them and afforded them rights and privileges that they didn't have in other parts of Europe. So I've arrived to the Plaza Novi, and this was the main square of Kazimierz. It still is today, but when it was founded as a city in the 14th century, actually it was much larger than it is today. It was almost the size of Krakow's main square, measuring almost 200 metres by 200 metres. The fountain and the statue in front of me represents the three fountains, and the building at the back of the square, which today is the Ethnographic Museum, was once the town hall of Kazimierz. Beautiful Renaissance building which stands there today, dating from the 16th century. We can have a little look around the square, which is lined with cafes and restaurants which are still selling some takeaway at the moment, so they have some business going on. And I'm going to make my way down there towards the second of the two churches founded by Kazimierz the Great in this area, the Church of Corpus Christi. The Church of Corpus Christi was founded by King Kazimierz the Great in 1340. It was completed after his death in 1405. We can take a short walk through the courtyard of the Church of Corpus Christi. The mural of Judah was painted in 2013 for a Jewish cultural festival. The child represents fear and vulnerability, while the lion represents the struggle of the Jews to preserve their people and their culture. So I'm standing on Josefa Street, and we have a number of murals here on the wall. These first two, King Kazimierz the Great, founder of the area, founder of the city. Alongside him his legendary lover, the beautiful Esterka, the great Jewish beauty. Alongside them, Karol Knaus, local Kazimierz architect. Helena Rubinstein, Queen of the Cosmetics, who came from Kazimierz. And then Joseph II of Habsburg, the patron of the street that we're on during the late 19th century. So I'm standing in Plaza Novi, which is in the heart of Kazimierz, and the building in front of me used to be a ritual slaughterhouse for poultry for the Jewish population. Today, this is where the locals come to get the very best zapiekanki, which are like a Polish pizza bread. Baguettes toasted with all sorts of delicious fillings on top. Surrounded by an antiques market during the weekends as well. This is one of the 7 remaining synagogues in the Jewish part of Kazimierz. So this was founded by a wealthy banker during the 17th century, Isaac Reb Yekele, and for that reason it's known as Isaac's Synagogue. Badly damaged during the Second World War, but restored during the 70s and the 80s. In front of me now is the High Synagogue. It's named so because the prayer room was located upstairs.
Diregeltun, oj, 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 diregeltun, Boże mój, diregeltun, grana oj, diregelt muss man zoll. Kommt in der Strusch, nimmt ob das Hitel, nun nass man zollt gen diregelt, en russa kvitel. Diregeltun, oj, 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 diregeltun, Boże mój, diregeltun, grana oj, diregelt muss man zoll. Diregelt grada voi, diregelt muss man zollen. Kommt in der Schornstein mit dem groben Stecken und nass man zollt kein Diregelt, stellt aus die Betten. Diregelt oi, 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 diregelt Boże mój, diregelt grada voi, diregelt muss man zollen.
So I think this is one of the most impressive murals of Kazimierz, which is dedicated to the Bosak family, who lived here for more than 500 years, many generations of the family, and were forced to flee to Israel during the course of the Second World War. So a real landmark of Jewish Kazimierz.
Muss man zollen. Diregelt, oi, 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 diregelt, Boże mój, diregelt, grada voi, diregelt muss man zollen. Diregelt, oi, 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 diregelt, Boże mój, diregelt, grada voi, diregelt muss man zollen. Diregelt, oi, 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 diregelt, Boże mój, diregelt, grada voi, oi, 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 oi.
So I'm here now on Szeroka Street, which was the heart of Jewish life here in Krakow, and it's usually a really buzzing centre of restaurants and cafes and Polish culture too. But of course, due to the pandemic, very quiet at the moment. It's interesting, one of the many cafe restaurants here serving dishes according to old Jewish recipes, Ariel. This was a favourite of Steven Spielberg and his production team when they were here filming Schindler's List. The story of Schindler, of course, happened here in Krakow and Kazimierz, and in the Podgorze district across the river is where Schindler had his factory. We'll continue a little further down Szeroka Street. Beautiful old buildings, When Spielberg came here, they didn't have to change too much at all because, of course, Krakow wasn't destroyed during the Second World War. So when it came to filming, much of the architecture here was original. The main thing they had to change, the main problem they had, of course, was that all of the houses had TV antennas. So they had to get rid of those antennas when they were filming Schindler's List. Interesting house here on the greenhouse here on my right. This was the birthplace and the home of the cosmetics queen, Helena Rubinstein, who of course moved from here to Victoria, Australia. Founded her cosmetics empire before moving to the United States. And this street is called Shiroka Street, which means the wide street. Directly ahead of me, on the site of a former Jewish cemetery, is a monument which is dedicated to 55,000 of Krakow's Jews who lost their lives during the Second World War and the Holocaust. Up ahead on the right side, the orange building, was the ritual bathhouse. Today again it's one of the many restaurant cafes which one can enjoy the traditional klezmer music and the Jewish recipes. This is the monument to Jan Karski, who smuggled himself into the Jewish ghettos of Poland in an effort to learn of the atrocities that were being committed. He took word to the governments of Poland, Britain and the United States, recognised as righteous amongst nations, honorary citizen of Israel, and awarded the Polish Order of the White Eagle and the American Presidential Medal of Freedom. The Remu Synagogue from the 16th century, which is most associated with the holy man Moses Izerles, who is buried in the cemetery, considered a very holy man and even a miracle worker. This monument marks the place where in October 1943 30 Polish prisoners were executed by the Nazi forces. And it stands right in front of the old synagogue, which we can see is attached to the former defensive walls of Kazimierz. Originally built in the early 16th century, rebuilt in a Renaissance style after the fire of 1557. Today houses the Jewish Cultural Centre and Museum. So I hope you enjoyed our walk through Kazimierz, everybody. My tram's about to arrive, so it's time for me to go. Take care until next time. Do widzenia!
oi, 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 oi.